Welcome to Psychodepth. I'm Mark Glatt, and on this channel, we explore the hidden side of human psychology, attraction, and behavior that most people never talk about. Here, you'll learn how the mind really works beneath the surface, why people feel what they feel, why they act the way they do, and how subtle psychological patterns shape relationships, emotions, and decisions. If you're curious about the deeper truths behind human behavior, you're in the right place. Even when everything seems perfect on the surface, there's still a quiet emptiness inside that refuses to go away. At first, this idea sounds confusing, almost contradictory. How can someone feel empty when their life looks complete? They may have a stable relationship, financial comfort, social validation, and even moments of happiness. From the outside, everything appears exactly how it should be. Yet internally, something feels off, like a gap that nothing seems to fully fill. This quiet emptiness often doesn't come from a lack of external success, but from a deeper psychological mismatch. People are taught to chase certain milestones, love, security, approval, believing that once these are achieved, happiness will naturally follow. But the human mind doesn't work in such a simple, linear way. What once felt exciting or fulfilling quickly becomes normal. This is known as emotional adaptation, the tendency to return to a baseline feeling no matter how much life improves on the surface. Over time, this creates a subtle cycle. You achieve something, feel good for a while, and then that feeling fades. So you look for the next thing, believing it will finally complete you. But when that too loses its impact, the emptiness quietly returns. Not louder, not dramatic, just persistent. There's also another layer to this. Sometimes people disconnect from their own inner needs while trying to maintain an ideal life. They focus so much on how things should look that they stop questioning how things actually feel. This creates an internal divide, a perfect outer image, but an unfulfilled inner state. And because everything looks fine from the outside, this feeling becomes even harder to explain. It's not obvious pain, not visible struggle, just a constant sense that something is missing, even if you can't clearly define what that something is. So the real question becomes, is happiness truly about having more, or about understanding what actually creates fulfillment on a deeper level? Maybe the emptiness isn't a flaw, it's a signal. A sign that surface-level success isn't enough on its own. That real satisfaction might come from alignment, meaning, and emotional awareness rather than just external achievements. Because in the end, if everything looks perfect but still feels incomplete, then the answer isn't outside. It's somewhere deeper within. If this made you think differently or feel something real, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because we're going deeper into the psychology that most people never talk about. From the outside, life looks complete and put together. But deep inside, something always feels missing. At first glance, this feels difficult to understand. If everything appears stable, career, relationships, social life, then why would there be a sense of something lacking? Most people assume that once the visible parts of life are in place, the internal experience should naturally match. But for many, that alignment never fully happens. This feeling often begins quietly. A person may go through their daily routine, meet expectations, maintain relationships, and even experience moments of happiness. Nothing seems obviously wrong.
Yet beneath all of this, there's a subtle emotional gap, a sense that something isn't fully connecting.
It's not intense enough to disrupt life, but it's consistent enough to be noticed. One reason for this is the difference between external structure and internal fulfillment. Life can be organized, successful, and socially validated, but still lack personal meaning. When people follow paths shaped by expectations, what they should want or achieve, they may end up building a life that looks right, but doesn't feel right. Over time, this creates a disconnect between appearance and experience. Another factor is emotional awareness. Many people become skilled at maintaining stability, but not at understanding their deeper needs. They learn how to function, perform, and adapt, but not always how to reflect on what genuinely fulfills them. As a result, they may continue moving forward without questioning whether their direction actually aligns with who they are. There's also the role of comparison. In a world where people constantly see curated versions of others' lives, it becomes easy to measure success externally. If everything matches or exceeds those visible standards, it should feel satisfying. But comparison doesn't create fulfillment. It only creates temporary validation. Once that fades, the internal sense of something missing returns. Importantly, this feeling doesn't always point to something dramatic or broken. It's often subtle and hard to define. People may struggle to explain it because there's no clear problem to fix. Everything seems fine, yet not complete. This makes the experience more confusing, as it doesn't fit into the usual idea of dissatisfaction or unhappiness. Over time, ignoring this feeling can lead to a deeper sense of disconnection, not necessarily from others, but from oneself. The more someone focuses only on maintaining the external image of a well-structured life, the more distant their internal experience can become. This is why the sense of something missing shouldn't be dismissed too quickly. It may not be a sign that life is failing, but rather a sign that something important hasn't been fully understood yet. Instead of asking what more can be added externally, the more relevant question becomes, what is absent internally that no external achievement has been able to replace? Because sometimes the most complete-looking life can still feel incomplete, simply because what truly matters hasn't been fully recognized. And the strangest part is, no matter what changes, that feeling doesn't disappear. It keeps coming back. This is what makes the experience so confusing. Normally, we expect feelings to change when circumstances change. If life improves, emotions should improve too. But in this case, even after progress, achievements, or new experiences, the same underlying feeling quietly returns. At first, it may seem like the solution is to keep changing things. New goals, new relationships, new environments. And for a short time, that works. There's a boost of excitement, a sense of movement, even temporary fulfillment. But once that fades, the same emotional pattern reappears, almost as if nothing truly changed at all. This happens because the feeling isn't always tied to external conditions. It often comes from an internal baseline, a deeper psychological state that remains stable despite surface-level changes. So while life on the outside evolves, the internal experience stays familiar. Over time, this can create a cycle. You chase something new, feel better briefly, and then return to that same emotional point. The repetition makes it feel like you're moving forward, but somehow ending up in the same place again. What's important to understand is that this doesn't mean nothing works. It simply suggests that external change alone isn't enough to create lasting emotional shifts. Without addressing the internal patterns, how thoughts, expectations, and perceptions are shaped, the feeling continues to repeat itself. That's why it keeps coming back. Not because life isn't changing, but because the deeper experience of it remains the same. So what if the real problem isn't life itself, but the way happiness is wired and experienced in the mind? This idea shifts the focus from external circumstances to internal processing. Most people naturally assume that happiness depends on what happens to them: success, relationships, money, recognition, or stability. So when someone feels unhappy, the first instinct is to look at life and try to fix it from the outside. Change the situation, improve the conditions, remove problems, or add better experiences. But this question suggests something deeper. What if life is not the main issue at all?
What if the real difference lies in how the mind interprets and processes everything that happens? Human happiness is not a direct reaction to events. It is filtered through expectations, memories, comparisons, and emotional patterns. Two people can go through the same experience and feel completely different about it. One may feel satisfied, while the other feels empty or unsatisfied. The event is the same, but the internal wiring is different. This is because the brain constantly adapts. What once felt exciting becomes normal over time. This is how the mind prevents constant emotional overload. But the side effect is that pleasure fades faster than expected. Achievements stop feeling as powerful. New experiences lose intensity more quickly. As a result, people start believing something is missing in their lives, when in reality, the response system itself has adjusted. Another important part of this wiring is expectation. The mind often builds an idea of how happy something should make us feel. When reality doesn't match that expectation, disappointment appears, even if the actual experience is objectively good. This gap between expectation and reality quietly shapes emotional satisfaction. Over time, this creates a pattern. People chase external improvements, expecting lasting happiness, but the internal system resets each time. So even when life improves, the feeling doesn't always stay. This is why the question is powerful. It suggests that the search for happiness may not only be about changing life, but also about understanding how the mind creates and loses satisfaction in the first place. And maybe that's the reason true satisfaction never really lasts, no matter how much you achieve. At first, this idea can feel unsettling. We grow up believing that happiness is something we eventually secure through success, relationships, stability, or personal milestones. The assumption is simple. Once you reach a certain point, you'll finally feel complete. But in reality, many people discover that even after achieving what they once deeply wanted, the feeling of satisfaction fades faster than expected. This doesn't mean those achievements are meaningless. They do bring joy, excitement, and a sense of progress. But the key issue is that these emotions are often temporary. The human mind is designed to adapt. What once felt extraordinary slowly becomes normal, and what was once enough starts to feel average. This process quietly resets our emotional baseline, making it harder for any single achievement to provide long-term fulfillment. Over time, this creates a pattern. A person sets a goal, works toward it, and finally reaches it. There's a moment of happiness, sometimes even a strong one, but it doesn't last. Soon after, a new desire takes its place. Another goal, another expectation, another chase begins. On the surface, it looks like growth and ambition, but internally, it can feel like an endless loop where satisfaction is always temporary. Another layer to this is comparison. In today's world, people are constantly exposed to curated versions of others' lives. No matter how much someone achieves, there's always someone who appears to have more, do more, or be more. This creates a subtle pressure where satisfaction is continuously interrupted by the feeling that something better exists just out of reach. There's also the role of internal alignment. Sometimes people achieve goals that were shaped by external expectations rather than personal meaning. When success is built around what looks right instead of what feels right, it can lead to a strange emotional disconnect. Everything appears successful, yet something feels incomplete. This makes satisfaction even harder to maintain because the foundation itself isn't fully aligned with deeper needs. All of this leads to an important realization. Lasting satisfaction may not come from constantly adding more to life, but from understanding how the experience of fulfillment actually works. It involves awareness of expectations, acceptance of adaptation, and a deeper connection to what genuinely matters on a personal level. Because in the end, if satisfaction always fades after achievement, then the solution isn't just to achieve more, it's to understand why the feeling doesn't stay in the first place. This content is for general psychological insight and self-reflection. It doesn't apply equally to every individual, and it's not meant to define all women or human experiences. Emotional patterns can vary widely based on personality, life circumstances, and mental health. If someone feels persistent emptiness or distress, it's important to consider professional guidance. If this perspective made you think differently or helped you understand something deeper, consider following the channel for more content on human psychology, behavior, and hidden emotional patterns that most people overlook.